So I just want to give a few tips. One about shoes. Always make sure that you have a good shoe with good, smooth, flat insoles. At the same time, they're not too soft, because a lot of times what happens is the floor that you're going to be dancing on either going to be hardwood most of the time. Sometimes it's going to be, in some cases, especially your wedding, sometimes it could be marble, and sometimes it could be concrete if you do something on the street. So you need to get a good insole that you're comfortable dancing in, but at the same time not too thick, but make sure it's also not too thin. A lot of times what I've seen is if you buy an insole that's too thin, so for example, some shoes sell kind of cloth material with a thinner insole. I highly recommend not to get that tight, because what happens is you tend to get injured, not to mention it's a bit too flexible. Also, if the shoe could be the exterior of it, it's good if it's a soft material. A lot of times suede shoes are really good. I recommend either the Adidas or the Puma suede shoes, just like the ones that I'm wearing, because the material itself is very soft, but it's not too soft that if you hit your foot off the ground, the shock still gets absorbed a little, but you won't hurt yourself as badly as opposed to if it's just cloth. So shoes are really important. I highly recommend, and I always say this to all my students, not to dance in socks. The reason is that the socks are way too slippery, and a lot of times you might slip and fall down. Two, it gives you unrealistic practicing for actual moves that you're going to be doing on the floor. So if you practice in socks, it doesn't give you enough grip, so that when you're actually wearing shoes, you're not used to the grip of the shoes. So what happens is you'll be practicing moves in socks, and when you put shoes on, the move will feel much different, because now you have shoes with grip on them. So I also recommend always put your shoes on. The last thing is, it's not just slip and hazard, but if you hit your foot off the ground, especially after doing a certain turning move, you're most likely going to get injured, because the socks are just a simple, very thin cloth. So I recommend whenever you practice, put on shoes. Get some sort of a mat that you can hold at home. It could be a thin yoga mat. It could be some mats that I would just highly recommend. They're not going to be too thick, not too thin, but not too thick. This way you can practice the moves, and at the same time they'll have a realistic sort of approach to them. When you practice them, you won't fall down, and then if it's too soft, it's not going to replicate the same type of move that you're going to do on, let's say, a hardwood floor. So just recommend keep a soft mat, not too soft. Yoga mats are good. A lot of times those mats that you can buy at Walmart, they're shaped like a puzzle that you put together. Those are also really good. The last thing that I would just recommend when you practice, probably the best to do is practice on a hardwood floor, or any other floor we can put cardboard on. Cardboard is actually a really good floor because it has a soft effect. At the same time, it's not too slippery, and it's also not too hard. So it's a good expected kind of scenario, especially if you're going to be at a wedding or some sort of an event. Most likely, most dancers at hardwood floor. So I highly recommend that or cardboard. I just recommend to stay away from marble floors. The reason is that they're extremely hard, and when you fall down, it doesn't absorb the shock as much as a hardwood floor does. So if you get injured, you can really get injured after falling on even concrete or a marble floor. So with those tips, I think most likely, if you haven't picked up your dance shoes, I highly recommend just pick up some sort of a dance shoe. Try not to do it in dress shoes, because they're too slippery most of the time. And at the same time, they're not very comfortable for dancing, especially on the part of the heel. If you have access to a hardwood floor, a basement, or your living room, that's the ideal floor. And one more time, it's good to have a mat handy. So I hope you enjoyed. It's been great being together. Please feel free to email me. You can even call me if you have any questions. If you watch the DVD or need some tips, I'm more than happy to speak. I hope you enjoyed. The biggest tip I'll give is just keep practicing. A lot of these moves just have to do with constant repetition of the moves. Always try to practice them. Just remember, it's very difficult to go from basics all the way to advanced moves. You need to really go in a step-by-step process. So it's kind of like learning from ABCs all the way to reading textbooks. You have to go from the very basics, and then to the intermediate, from intermediate to advanced. And most important of all, so just have fun, okay? It's fun sometimes, even if it doesn't work out, a move you will catch it on later. A lot of times, if you try one day, it doesn't work, in about a week it'll work again. So have fun, you can get your friends involved. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to call me or send me an email. I'm always happy to help out. Thanks so much. Thanks for purchasing the DVD, and have fun and dance away. Cheers.